How did Alex Murdaugh, an attorney born into one of South Carolina's most influential legal dynasties, fall from grace so spectacularly? A respected family name now overshadowed by scandal. A gruesome double murder that shocked the nation. A web of deceit stretching from financial crimes to stage attacks. Could a man with so much wealth, power, and legacy to protect truly be capable of such cold-blooded actions? Or does the truth lie buried in the shadows of privilege and power? This is the story of Alex Murdaugh, the man at the center of one of the most twisted and shocking cases in modern American history. On the night of June 7, 2021, a frantic 911 call shattered the peace in Culloden County, South Carolina. Alex Murdaugh, a renowned attorney and the patriarch of one of the state's most powerful families, described a terrifying scene on the family's sprawling Moselle estate. Maggie's 52-year-old wife was discovered near the dog kennels, shot multiple times with a powerful rifle. Just a few steps away lay their youngest son Paul, who was 22, who had been killed by a shotgun blast. The brutality of the crime shocked the community, but the mystery surrounding it was even more chilling. The Murdaughs weren't just another wealthy family in the Lowcountry. They were a dynasty. For nearly a century, the family dominated South Carolina's legal system, wielding prosecutorial authority that influenced the lives of countless people in the state. Their name evoked respect, influence, and in some cases, fear. However, this tragedy began to peel back the layers of a carefully curated image, revealing cracks in the Murdaugh legacy. In the days and weeks following the murders, whispers circulated about financial corruption, hidden debts, and desperate lies. Alex Murdaugh, the man who called for help that fateful night, quickly found himself amid a storm. The system that his family had ruled over for generations was now scrutinizing him. Could this be true? Could a man of such stature with everything to lose commit such heinous acts? Or did something darker and more sinister lurk behind the scenes? To understand the tragic events of June 7, 2021, we must first examine the Murdaugh family, a name that for over a century was synonymous with power and prestige in South Carolina's Lowcountry. For generations, the Murdaughs dominated the region's legal system, holding the position of solicitor in the 14th Judicial Circuit. This role, akin to a district attorney, gave them unparalleled influence over 5 counties. Their decisions carried weight not just in courtrooms, but also in the broader political and social fabric of the Lowcountry. Yet, beneath the legacy of control and affluence, controversy brewed. Despite their stature, the family's name became entangled in whispers of scandal, raising questions about the cost of maintaining such power and whether cracks in their facade had been hidden for years. In February 2019, 19-year-old Paul Murdaugh found himself at the center of a tragedy that would forever alter the lives of those involved and cast a shadow over his family's reputation. On a foggy evening, Paul was piloting a boat with 5 friends on board when it struck a bridge near Paris Island. The violent crash threw 19-year-old Mallory Beach into the dark, frigid waters. Search teams combed the area for days, but it wasn't until a week later that Mallory's body was discovered, bringing a heart-wrenching end to the ordeal. Authorities determined that Paul had been heavily intoxicated at the time of the crash, and he was subsequently charged with 3 felonies, including boating under the influence, resulting in death. Yet, even as legal proceedings unfolded, allegations of preferential treatment and undue influence began to surface. Whispers circulated that the Murdaugh name, so deeply rooted in the region's legal system, had protected Paul from the full force of justice. For the Beach family, the tragedy was compounded by frustration with the legal system. Their pursuit of accountability revealed the immense power the Murdaughs wielded. Meanwhile, Paul's trial faced repeated delays, and lawsuits stemming from the incident began to mount, turning the public's gaze squarely on the family. This devastating incident didn't just claim the life of a young woman. It also ignited a firestorm of scrutiny and resentment toward the Murdaughs, forcing their seemingly untouchable legacy under an unforgiving spotlight. Do you think the delays in Paul's trial reflect a failure of the justice system, or were they a result of the immense power and influence of the Murdaugh family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Maggie Murdaugh was often described by friends as a loving and devoted wife and mother. She cherished her two sons, Paul and Buster, and took pride in the luxurious lifestyle her family enjoyed. Yet, beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect lives, whispers of tension began to emerge. In the months leading up to the murders, some reports suggested that Maggie had grown increasingly distant from Alex. She often retreated to the family's beach house on Edisto Island, perhaps seeking solace from the mounting pressures at home. The question lingered: how much did Maggie know about the troubles brewing within her family? While the public's focus was on Paul's legal battles after the 2019 boat crash, a far deeper and more insidious storm was building behind closed doors. This one centered squarely on Alex Murdaugh. As a partner in the prestigious family law firm, PMPD, Alex had access to immense wealth and resources. For years, he projected an image of success, but by 2021, cracks in that facade began to show. Investigators later discovered that Alex had been orchestrating elaborate schemes to embezzle millions of dollars from his firm and its clients. This included diverting settlement funds meant for wrongful death victims and their families. The financial strain on Alex was growing unbearable. Lawsuits, mounting debts, and the looming threat of exposure placed him in a precarious position. Adding to the pressure was the Beach family's wrongful death lawsuit, which threatened not only Alex's reputation, but the Murdaugh family's assets. If the case moved forward, it could result in the seizure of properties, including the sprawling Moselle estate and the Edisto Island beach house. By 2021, Alex Murdaugh was a man under siege, facing mounting legal and financial crises with no clear way out. This toxic mix of desperation and deceit set the stage for a series of events that would change the Murdaugh family forever. Do you think the unraveling of Alex's financial schemes contributed to the tragedy? Or was it just one piece of a much larger puzzle? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The Murdaugh family's gilded facade was crumbling under the weight of lawsuits, financial crimes, and personal tragedies. Their once unshakable reputation now hung by a thread. Everything seemed to be unraveling for Alex, but no one could have predicted what would happen next. What do you think? Were the pressures on Alex enough to push him to the breaking point? Or is there another explanation for what happened at Moselle? Share your thoughts in the comments below. June 7, 2021. It was an ordinary summer evening, or so it seemed, at the Murdaugh family's sprawling 1,700-acre estate in Culloden County, South Carolina. Known as Moselle, the property was both expansive and isolated, its vast fields and wooded areas cloaked in an unsettling quiet as the sun set that night. At 10:07 p.m., Alex Murdaugh dialed 911, his voice trembling with panic. "I need the police and an ambulance immediately. My wife and son have been shot." Alex told the dispatcher that he had just returned home to find the bodies of his wife, Maggie, and son, Paul, near the property's dog kennels. When first responders arrived, the scene they encountered was nothing short of horrific. Paul Murdaugh was found first. He was lying near the entrance to the kennels, shot twice with a shotgun. One blast struck his chest. The other, a devastating head wound, left no chance of survival. Nearby, Maggie was found face down. She had been shot multiple times with an assault rifle, her body lying in the damp grass just yards from her son. Blood pooled around them, and the quiet hum of insects in the warm South Carolina night was punctuated by the flashing lights of emergency vehicles. The brutality of the scene left even seasoned investigators shaken. Alex claimed he had been visiting his ailing mother, who lived just minutes away, at the time of the murders. He insisted he had returned home to discover the bodies, immediately calling 911. But investigators quickly began to notice inconsistencies in his story. Cell phone records revealed that Alex's phone was not as inactive during the evening as he initially claimed. Furthermore, a Snapchat video taken by Paul just minutes before his death contradicted Alex's timeline. The video, showing Alex near the kennels, placed him at the scene much closer to the time of the murders than he admitted. Questions began to mount. Why was Alex at the kennels moments before the murders, yet claimed to have been elsewhere? Why were there no signs of forced entry or struggle? And how did two different firearms, one a shotgun, the other an assault rifle, end up being used in the killings? Investigators also noted Alex's demeanor. While he appeared distraught during the 911 call and initial interviews, some found his reactions calculated, even rehearsed. Others pointed to peculiar actions in the hours following the murders, including how quickly Alex began coordinating with attorneys and discussing his alibi. The crime scene was brutal, the timeline murky, and the details haunting. But with so much at stake, his family's reputation, his finances, his freedom, was Alex Murdaugh a grieving husband and father, or something much darker? What's your take on Alex Murdaugh's actions that night? Do they suggest innocence, or are they signs of a man hiding a terrible secret? Share your theories in the comments below. As the investigation unfolded, the picture surrounding the murders of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh grew increasingly complex. What initially seemed like a senseless act of violence began to reveal layers of motive, deception, and desperation. One of the first major breakthroughs came from an unexpected source: Paul Murdaugh's Snapchat account. Just minutes before the murders, Paul recorded a short video near the family's kennels. In the background, a voice could be heard, one that investigators later confirmed belonged to Alex Murdaugh. This was a critical blow to Alex's alibi. He had previously stated that he was not at the kennels that evening, instead claiming he was visiting his ailing mother. But the Snapchat video placed him at the scene mere moments before his wife and son were killed. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered another web of lies, this one involving Alex's financial dealings. For years, Alex had been embezzling money from his law firm, clients, and even settlements meant for grieving families. The scale of his theft was staggering. Millions of dollars siphoned through fraudulent schemes. By 2021, the walls were closing in. His firm, PMPED, had begun questioning discrepancies in financial records, and lawsuits related to the 2019 boat crash threatened to expose his criminal activity. Prosecutors later argued that this financial pressure played a pivotal role in Alex's actions. They believed the murders of Maggie and Paul were a desperate attempt to gain sympathy and divert attention from his crumbling empire. Then, in September 2021, another bizarre incident put Alex Murdaugh back in the headlines. Alex called 911 from a rural roadside, claiming he had been shot in the head by an unknown assailant while changing a tire. But the story quickly unraveled. Investigators discovered that Alex had orchestrated the shooting himself, allegedly hiring a former client to stage the attack. His goal? To make his death appear as a murder, allowing his surviving son, Buster, to collect a $10 million life insurance payout. This staged shooting raised serious questions about Alex's mental state and motivations. If he was willing to go to such lengths to manipulate the narrative, what else might he be hiding? Forensic evidence soon began to unravel Alex Murdaugh's claims of innocence, raising even more questions about the events of June 7, 2021. Gunshot residue was detected on Alex's clothing from the night of the murders, suggesting that he may have fired a weapon. Investigators also flagged alarming inconsistencies in his statements and behavior. One key discrepancy was Alex's claim that he had checked the pulses of Maggie and Paul upon discovering their bodies. Yet when law enforcement arrived, there were no visible traces of blood on his hands or clothing, a puzzling detail that cast doubt on his version of events. Adding to the mystery was the use of two separate firearms in the killings, a rifle for Maggie and a shotgun for Paul. This unusual detail led investigators to consider whether it was a deliberate attempt to mislead authorities into believing there were multiple perpetrators. As the investigation progressed, the evidence against Alex Murdaugh continued to pile up. Damning cell phone records contradicted his timeline. Financial records exposed desperate attempts to cover up years of embezzlement and fraud. The portrait of Alex as a grieving father began to shift into something darker and far more complex. Was this a case of a man driven to unthinkable actions by desperation and fear of exposure? Or was it the calculated cover-up of someone trying to outsmart the system? The trial of Alex Murdaugh became far more than just a murder case. It was a dramatic reckoning for a family dynasty, a courtroom battle that peeled back layers of privilege, power, and deceit. For 6 weeks, the nation was riveted by every twist and turn, as the prosecution and defense clashed over the narrative surrounding one of the most shocking and twisted crimes in recent memory. From the outset, the prosecution's case was both chilling and direct. Alex Murdaugh was a man cornered by his own greed and deceit, and his desperation led to an unthinkable act. On the night of June 7, 2021, prosecutors argued Alex lured Maggie and Paul to the dog kennels under the pretense of a family meeting. What followed, they claimed, was a calculated and ruthless plan. Paul was shot first, once in the chest and then in the head at close range, the second shot inflicting devastating wounds. Moments later, Maggie was gunned down with an assault rifle, sustaining multiple wounds as she appeared to flee. But why would a father and husband commit such a heinous crime? Prosecutors painted a damning picture. Alex, consumed by greed and fear, saw no other way out. For years, he had been embezzling millions of dollars from his law firm and clients, money meant for grieving families and victims of wrongful deaths. Days before the murders, colleagues at PMPED confronted Alex about missing funds, and the Beach family's wrongful death lawsuit threatened to expose the full extent of his crimes. Prosecutor Creighton Waters delivered a stark message to the jury. The evidence shows he was under immense pressure, and on that fateful night, he chose to kill the people closest to him in an attempt to save himself. It was a shocking theory that Alex, a man born into privilege and power, would destroy his own family to preserve his crumbling reputation. In a move that surprised many legal experts, Alex Murdaugh took the stand in his own defense. Over 2 days of grueling testimony, Alex admitted to financial crimes, confessing to stealing millions from clients and his law firm. He attributed his behavior to a 20-year opioid addiction, claiming the drugs clouded his judgment. With his voice trembling, Alex apologized to the jury. "I've done wrong. I've hurt people that I care about deeply, but I would never intentionally hurt Maggie or Paul." He recounted moments of happiness with his wife and son, breaking down in tears as he pleaded for the jury to believe in his innocence. Some found his testimony emotional and compelling, but others saw it as a calculated performance. Prosecutors seized the opportunity to dismantle his narrative. They challenged Alex about inconsistencies in his story, particularly the pivotal Snapchat video recorded by Paul. The video placed Alex at the kennels just minutes before the murders, contradicting his initial claim that he had been visiting his mother at the time. Confronted with this evidence, Alex admitted to lying about his whereabouts, blaming his deception on paranoia fueled by his addiction. Yet this admission only raised more questions. If Alex was willing to lie about such a critical detail, what else was he hiding? The prosecution built its case on a combination of digital and forensic evidence. Paul's Snapchat video became a cornerstone, proving Alex's presence at the scene shortly before the murders. Forensic experts testified about gunshot residue on Alex's clothing, suggesting he may have handled a firearm that night. CrimeScene analysts highlighted the use of 2 separate weapons, an assault rifle and a shotgun, arguing that this detail was meant to mislead investigators into believing there were multiple killers. Financial witnesses provided a final, devastating layer of evidence. Alex's colleagues testified about uncovering his embezzlement just days before the murders, recalling how he had been evasive and nervous when confronted. Records revealed a trail of misappropriated funds, further painting Alex as a man desperate to protect his secrets at any cost. After 6 weeks of emotional testimony, the jury received the case. Despite nearly 30 witnesses and hundreds of pieces of evidence, the deliberation was swift, lasting less than 3 hours. Their verdict was unequivocal. Alex Murdaugh was found guilty of the murders of Maggie and Paul. On March 3, 2023, Alex stood in court as Judge Clifton Newman handed down his sentence. The judge described the case as one of the most troubling he had ever presided over, addressing Alex directly. "You have taken the lives of 2 people who meant the most to you. You will now spend the rest of your life dealing with that reality." Alex Murdaugh was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, marking the end of a trial that laid bare the devastating consequences of greed, betrayal, and desperation. The trial of Alex Murdaugh pulled back the curtain on a man consumed by his own lies, willing to risk everything to maintain his crumbling empire. Yet, even with the guilty verdict reached and his life sentence handed down, the case leaves behind lingering questions. Was this truly the desperate act of a man pushed to his breaking point, or are there still hidden truths within the dark legacy of the Murdaugh family? For decades, the Murdaugh name symbolized authority and influence in South Carolina's Lowcountry. They were the arbiters of justice, their decisions shaping the lives of countless people. But the trial revealed a dynasty built not just on power, but on secrets, deceit, and unchecked privilege. Now, the Murdaugh name is no longer synonymous with prestige. It has become a cautionary tale. A family that once held the reins of influence is now marked by greed, betrayal, and the devastating loss of life. Even with Alex Murdaugh behind bars, the story feels incomplete. Are there still deeper, darker secrets hidden within the legacy of the Murdaughs? Were the murders of Maggie and Paul simply the desperate actions of a man at his lowest, or do they point to something even more sinister? What's your take on Alex Murdaugh's conviction? Do you believe justice was fully served, or do you think there are unanswered questions left in this case? We want to hear your thoughts and theories in the comments below. If you thought this story was shocking, stay tuned. Next week, we'll bring you another gripping tale of power, corruption, and crime. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode.